one of the biggest problems from the external world infecting the soul of people is this illusion of that you can do it, right? The yes we can society, you can do this, anyone can do this. And it's like, no, but you can't do it actually. And so this confuses, especially young minds. You and I know that we can't do it. So, I'm not going to be Brad Pitt, you're not going to be Kate Blanchett. It just ain't going to happen. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. And we are completely fine with that. We're okay with our little place in the world and are happy here. But the messaging for the younger people particularly, and the people who end up, unfortunately, gaining these depressive states is because the messaging is wrong. You can do it. You ought to succeed to be good enough, and this and that. And when you don't measure up to this illusory scale that they've created, then that's when a lot of this depression comes on, right? And so it's first of all, when we talk about this, even before we even get into spirituality in general, in relation to this is a recognition that people have to realize. This is my place in the world. Can you accept that, right? And the problem is lack of acceptance. So I'm a garbage man in Brisbane. Can you accept that you're a garbage man in Brisbane? You're depressed with this situation or this plight that you have in life, but can you just accept where you are? And it's not that it's a good or a bad thing. You're still measuring your occupation to other occupations that you think are better. But who's going to pick up the trash? So there's a sense of like valor in picking up the trash. Like you are the one that's doing that work that most of us would never want to do, but your life course has put you in that place to pick up the trash. And that might not be forever, right? And so I've had many jobs, you've had many jobs, most people listening and watching have had many jobs. And, life has this ebb and flow and you change course and this and that. But there's this real finality with people's thinking in this day and age. I am the Brisbane garbage man forever. And it's like, not really. Like, this is a process. You might be. And look, if you're content with that, then that's probably a better place than most people are in their lives. If you have that sort of Taoist contentment of contentment, right? And the simple things like that. But like I said, before we get into spirituality and the deeper tenets of self-obsession and over-identification and this and that, you have to realize where you are, your station in life, and you have to realize that the game that's being played has changed. It's a more complex game now than it was like when we were reminiscing about the 80s and 90s and 70s and 60s. It's a lot more of a complicated game than what it was back then.
Yes. We are in the end somewhat victims of this mass hypnosis of the world, which is the very anxiety for constant progress. So the society and the world in general is changing to accommodate that. And the anxiety of the constant progress is infinite possibilities, which goes into the infinite positivities, like you said, the yes we can idea, right? So let's say, before millennium, like before 2000, like you mentioned about 80s and 90s, how good the cultures were and how we were all in the same page, we got along and then this and that. And back in those days, we were, let's say, a little bit more like a rule-based society, that we all knew our place, like you said, that we knew our plight in the society. We never much too keen to look over the fences and abide by the rules, and we respect each other and so on, right? And from that world, as in a bigger scale of let's say a national level, it kind of hit the threshold of productivity from having the rule-based society, right? So kind of organically, gradually, and naturally, the world slowly moved into this achievement-based society as dawn of internet, age of internet, and dawn of social media after that, right? Once social media arrived to our reality, it became much more of what me-centered, like what entrepreneurship, and you can do it, I can do everything, and you've got all the tools and informations out there, and go and get it, and this sort of mentality came into our mind. So we all get infected by that idea, so we believe that we can do it, and we pursue that path, right? But in the bigger picture, in that way is much more efficient. The society becomes much more efficient and productive, because in the rule-based society, individuals had to abide by the rules. So that means that, let's say, profit come from the companies and whatnot, that is moving by the rules. Whereas when it comes to individual-based, like a business environment, because of it, we can do it mentality, there is no limit. It becomes like a self-exploitation and kind of a overly hard-working work ethics, and these things enhance to our burnout stage. So that makes us like victims of this the world in the grand scheme. So again, depressive feeling and depression and loneliness is a result of that, right? So once we understand that, then are we subconsciously driven by this anxiety for progress in our individualistic level, right?
Yep.
It's constantly, we can do it, I can do it, I can achieve more, I can make more money than last year, I can make my business to the next level and have more followers than next year, continual growth and this and that. Is it really possible? How far can you really push, you know? And what's the casualty in doing so? That is that depressed world,
of course, yeah.
right? So I think if you break it down to that, like we can apply a few things to our personal life, right? Maybe I've been too greedy, or I was pushing too much. Like you said, we know we're not Hollywood stars, and we can't even act in a normal life.
Well, speak for yourself, there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So knowing your place and having that honesty with yourself is the first thing
for sure.
that you need to realize, that it's not like you're inability to do something, or you're not as good as somebody, and it's not really like that. The people get into this competitive game, right? But it's not about that. Everyone has different strengths, and people are different, and you're good at something which other people are not good at, and other people are good at something which you aren't good at. And these things that you're just accepting things, you accepting the restrictions and possibilities, and that are not actually infinite. You know, it's ridiculous to think like that, right? But we want to believe that's true, right? But from that stupid belief that we all suffer, that once we accept that we can't do everything, it's actually comfortable in that place, right? And you stop thinking about yourself too much. Again, the depression comes from you thinking too much about yourself, and why am I like this, why I'm not good at this and that, and you become prisoner in your own mind, and you're self-obsessed about yourself in a very like the false idea of yourself, false idea of identity of who you think you are, right? So the spiritual process is getting out of that prison of your mind, and the prison of your mind is actually doesn't have any character, doesn't have any personality. You just dwell in this swamp of thoughts and like this gloomy thinking, and so once you get out of that, is actually then real life begins.
Yeah, I feel like it's really like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like you're brought up in this achievement-based society, the yes we can, and the world's telling you that positivity is the way, and everything is like this, everything is love and light and all this sort of BS. And inside you're dying. But like I said, with the double-edged sword, like, so the achievement-based society is telling you all these things, so you start to think about yourself, you start to obsess about yourself as a result of that messaging. And then you don't see any sort of immediate success, or you don't see success at all, let's say, in that type of field or perspective, right? And so then that's when you begin to like go into dark place, right? Like, because it's not going to work for all of us, right? It might work for some people. Like someone might go to a Tony Robbins 4-day lecture or whatever, and one person out of the 5,000 people may get it and they may go forward with their business or this and that. But the rest are just there getting fed the same message over and over and over again. It makes them feel good temporarily. It's almost like a church gathering where we're all sitting there, hallelujah, hallelujah, and then we all go home to our problems and this and that, and it all begins again. No real transformation has happened. And that's just all part of that achievement-based society. So you've got this double-edged sword, you're getting this message from the outside, you begin to obsess about yourself because you then have this illusion that you think you can do it and you can't, right? Real positive message is, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually not negative, because no, you can't, right? I want to be an astronaut. No, you can't. I want to create cars like Tesla. No, you can't. These are all good messages that you need to, and this is just the truth, right? This is just the truth. Like, yeah, there might be someone that's going to be an astronaut, but it's really rare, right? It's pretty rare to have an aptitude to be an astronaut. And so this is the incorrect messaging, and this is what's infiltrating the souls of people. And so when we don't fulfill that expectation of the achievement-based society, that's when the dark place begins. And so it inculcates this self-obsession, like what you were saying, this over-identification with the self, right? If we go back into our parents' generation and this and that, there wasn't a sort of a self-obsession, because my mum and dad were just cleaners, right? I shouldn't say just cleaners; they were both cleaners. And that was just their way. They're cleaners. That's it. They clean schools and stuff like this. And that's their path, and they never thought anything about it. They got their paycheck at the end of the week. It was enough to get groceries. Off you go, right? And so there's a happiness in just the simplicity of life, rather than, they were never getting the message of, yes, we can. Barack Obama hadn't come around at that time just yet, telling everyone, yes, we can. It's like, sure, bud. And so this is like the complete wrong messaging, and it's infiltrating the hearts of the young, the youth, which is terrible, because they're starting to think that they actually can do this and that. And social media gives you the illusion that you can too, right? So for example, me growing up in Mackay, Bakers Creek, and like I said, there was no chance to get in Hollywood, right? There's actually no chance to be famous. But the illusion in this day and age is, if you have a phone and you're in Bakers Creek, you get good at TikTok or something like this, But again, that's still an illusion, because the chances of you becoming famous on social media is pretty slim, because there's so many people on it. It's even worse. It's actually more likely for you to be famous in Hollywood than it would be to be in social media.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many people that go to Hollywood, right, and try to make it. And so that's the kind of irony about it. But this yes we can culture is just doubling down on this self-obsession, which we didn't have just 20 years ago. Like, not overly obsessed, right? Obviously, there were depressed people back in the day, and they all suffered from the same problem, which is basically self-obsession and over-analysis of their plight in life. But it's enhanced now because of the achievement-based society is growing and growing and growing and growing in tandem with technology and social media and all of these corporations that are constantly pushing this message. But my message to people is, that message is dead.
The yes we can idea is actually very abstract. It's not realistic at all. Like you said, might have better chance to be actually present in somewhere like Hollywood if you want to be a actor or whatever, right? The yes we can idea is only born out of a social media, really, and we trying to project that idea in reality, but that becomes a problem, right? Like you said, in the countryside somewhere, but with a phone, get you a wrong idea, wrong message of yes, you can, right? But in reality, reality is far from it. Like first of all, you're in the middle of nowhere, and there's no such industry that you can start with to become be in the movie industry and this and that. So it's unrealistic, right? But this social media gives you wrong impression of the world, and unfortunately, that's the what the young generation is experiencing, so which is not very beneficial. And so people who reach out to spiritual knowledge in search of some sort of solution and remedy to improve their life and the level of happiness is it's a good move, it's a right move. But again, another obstacle that a lot of people actually face is that the self-obsessed mind, which cause the depression in the end, applies to the spiritual practice as well. So it sounds a bit funny, but that's how it is. Because they learn the certain meditation techniques, and they read some books in Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. And they try to apply these knowledge to their real life, but because they cannot move away from their prison of their own mind, so that somewhat they feel like hitting a brick wall after a while, I think, a lot of people. But the very point of getting into spiritual wisdom traditions is that the first thing that to be done is not the meditation techniques, it's not the Buddhist teaching, it's not any of that. First thing is to break away from the prison of your mind. Yep. That's the first and foremost to do it. The very problem of depression originates from having a lack of true self, having this lack of having sense of true self, let's say. Because that's why we have a false identity, false image of ourselves, right? We portray profile picture and blah, 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 right?
So spiritual.
But that's exactly the opposite to real spiritual teachings, obviously. So, so we need to replace that false identity with something completely different, something that is why actually essentially very difficult and people hard to grasp the concept to be away from your own mind, right? Because if you're lived in your head the whole your life, let's say 50, 60 years, and you come to spiritual knowledge, how do we do it? It's difficult, right? But first thing is just to be aware of that. We have been living in our own mind, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the next step has to come to how do we break from it, right? And then moving into these meditation techniques and so on and so on. And that has to be done first. And once we move kind of out of our mind, and once we become able to see the world a little bit more from the distance, right? From a distance, then I think we can develop healthy relationship with the world and with ourselves, right? And from that place, I think we'll be able to see what we've been doing wrong, and how the way you've been thinking of the world and everything was wrong, and this and that. You have some sort of perspective, I think, and so from that way, I think you can also apply to your spiritual practice a little bit more correct sense.
Yeah, I like that, because what you said, because if you think about the way people approach spirituality, it's still me-centered. Do you know what I mean? They're still trying to get something out of it for themselves. It's not taking them out of the equation.
Yes.
They're still wanting something from it. And this is a bit of a hangover from individuality, right? So because of the achievement-based society, which is centered on an individualistic society. It's not centered on a collective society, as you know. It's centered on an individualistic society. Yes, we can, you know. So you've got that messaging, and then they may go through the ringer of psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, psychology, psychiatry, which again is me-centered. And then they come to spirituality and they still overlay that same mentality, when spirituality is to pull the rug from underneath you, take you out of the equation so that you can see the world for the first time, right? And so the problem with like psychotherapy and psychiatry and everything like that is that people are going to have psychotherapy and they're being told to focus on themselves in an achievement-based society. So it doesn't work. It rarely works. And to be honest, you and I are often surprised about how many people, particularly in places like America, go to have psychotherapy. Like a
therapist, everyone has.
I mean, we've never had therapy ever. Maybe therapy with each other, but I mean, the whole therapy culture thing is complete bananas to me. But because what that does is tell you to overly focus on yourself. Try to work through these problems in an achievement-based society under the illusion of an individualistic society where you can be someone, and then where do you get to? You get to a dead end. Nothing works.
It's only reinforcing the problem. It's just around the circles.
That's right. And so then they come to spirituality as a last resort, right? As a last resort. For example, like in America, some people will go to the Christian teachings and they take solace under Christ and all of these things, right? Again, that still doesn't work to a certain degree because it appeases them to a certain extent to surrender, and there's a bit of bhakti yoga in that, but it doesn't really work on a certain level. It may work on a certain level if they're practicing a lot of karma yoga, because maybe in the end of the day they just need to get out of their head and they need to be in service to the world and to other people, which can help obviously depression and so forth and so on. But it's still a me-centered perspective, right? And so people are coming to spirituality. Say if we come to Taoism, Advaita, we come to Dzogchen in Vajrayana Buddhism, these ones are an inverse of everything that we've spoken about.
That's right.
And it puts it on its head. And so then, but people still have this mentality of being me-centered. And so if you're me-centered, you can't be helped from the teachings, It's one of those things, you have to almost like submit to the teachings, give yourself to the teachings, learn the teachings, understand the concepts, gain spiritual literacy, gain spiritual fluency in the deeper knowledge. Because, if you want to understand the wisdom of the sages, you have to understand their curriculum, basically, the curriculum of the divine. Learn these things, which will then take the focus off you, right? So you've given yourself to something. I'm going to give my life to the Vedic teachings. All right, so you give your life to the Vedic teachings. You're learning about Atman, Brahman, Jiva, Maya, Shakti, Shiva, everything, right? And it's a divine curriculum, and so you're learning this divine curriculum. It's constantly taking the focus off you, right? So like one of the greatest texts I would say for depression would be the Bhagavad Gita, right? So the Bhagavad Gita is basically telling you to accept your lot in life, understand your nature, your guna, your quality, and understand your vana, right? Understand your position, station in life, and function from that perspective. And that's actually where peace and equanimity comes from, because you're not in a yes we can society. It's, as you said, it's more of a rule-based society. It's a divine rule-based society.
That's right.
And so it's a dharmic society, and so you're operating in accord with Brahman, but you're not operating in accord with whatever the achievement-based society is telling you to do, right? And so this is the thing, because people are coming to the Eastern spiritual teachings, and this is how the New Age is created, right? New Age spirituality, because New Age spirituality is basically individualistic Eastern spirituality. So it's centered on the person, it's very gooey, very woo-woo, and there's no foundation there, because it's basically a denial of the tradition and sort of a westernification of Eastern spirituality, right? So with individualism and so forth and so on. So And that's what you have. And so most people don't get enlightened through New Age spirituality or read or meditating around crystals and things like this. So they don't usually get that. So when you reorient towards the actual traditions, it's a submission to the teachings. Because if you understand, say, for example, the 4 Mahavakyas, the 4 great sayings of the rishis, if you understand that Atman is Brahman, really, Brahman alone is real and everything like this, then you willingly follow that, and sort of that's the crucifixion of the self. That's the crucifixion of the ego submitting to the ultimate, right? But the problem is in our world, because of the achievement-based society, because of the messaging we have, that feels like a fatality to people, like a real death of themselves, right? And it's like, but your depression is the result of trying to be this ego, right? It's trying to hold on to this identity. That's the cause of your depression at its heart, right? You're obsessed with yourself. You're me-centered. The conversations I hear from you are often about yourself and not about the ultimate, not about connection with others. And you and I have seen this a lot, right? Particularly with Westerners, where there can be this almost narcissistic focus on themselves. And that's where spirituality doesn't accommodate that. I mean, it destroys that. But you have to willingly accept the teachings. And so that's part of the problem. They're not willingly accepting the teachings, and they really have narcissistic personality disorder is really what they have. And so when they come to spirituality, how can I be enlightened? How can this improve my life? And it's like, it doesn't. Likely you'll make less money. You
didn't get you nowhere.
Like, this is going to get you nowhere. You've seen the sadhus and the yogis? They don't have a 9 to 5. So
they used to.
Yeah. This destroyed the 9 to 5. So for yourself, it's about getting more skillful in kind of reducing the workload, so to speak, following the teachings, realizing you don't need that much money to survive, and so forth and so on. But that's the problem, right? How is this going to benefit me? What about me? Me? And all I hear is a lot of me, right? And I don't hear a lot of conversations about the teachings, conversations about the universe, and so forth and so on. It's very me-centered, because there may be subtle narcissistic disorder there, or just a subtle depression that they haven't revealed, and so they're self-obsessed with themselves. Will this meditation technique help me? Will this philosophy help me? Why should I invest my time in reading all of these books that you read, and so forth and so on? Well, first of all, reading will allow you to get out of your head, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. And so if you want to sit around and think about yourself all day, you're only going to get the same results, And so meditation, reading the great scriptures, connection, going on pilgrimage, all of these things get you out of your head. Stay in your familiar environment, stay in your head, don't read books, watch Netflix all day, look at other people's lives that you think are better than yours on social media. Where is that going to get you? Going to get you nowhere. Going to make you more depressed, have more psychosis. There's no end to that path.